I would give special thanks to Ms. Yanru Jiang, and who is our discussant and co-chair. And let me introduce Yanru Jiang, and she's a master student at the University of California. South California, and with dual master degree. The first one is a communication degree, and another one is applied data science degree. And she just got her offer from the PhD offer from University of California at Los Angeles. So congratulations. Yeah, and I also want to thank my Chinese friends. And it's really a very early time, and right now it is about 5 a.m. right now. So thanks for your hard work. Yeah. And let me introduce myself. And my name is Chengzhang, and I am currently working as a senior user researcher at the Department of User Experience Design at the ByteDance. And I believe every one of you must know who I am, right? Yeah. And previously, I worked also as a research assistant at the Department of Media and Communication at the University of Hong Kong. And let me introduce this panel. And for this panel, we would focus on the topic of communication and technology. Okay, and we would have three main issues. Let me introduce it. The first one is adoption of the emerging communication technology. For example, what is the obstacle and the contributor of adapting new communication technology. And in this part, Ms. Qianying would give us a presentation and take the 5G communication technology, the 5G telecommunication technology as an example. Yeah. And for the second part, it is about the social media context, including the media nature, the audience structure, and the recommendation algorithm. Yes. And yes, Mr. Bin Dai would compare to social media context and to social media platforms. Yes. And so he just want to focus on the impact of the social media. Okay. And the third part is about the human-computer interaction, the human-computer interaction and human-machine communication. Yes. And for this part, we would focus on some main concepts. For example, just like the trust, the credibility, the voice mode, the speech mode, and the voice gender, and something like the content type. Yes. So we will talk about all of these topics within our specific research. Okay, and for the panel format, we would have 4 presentations and each for 15 minutes. So please control your time. Please limit the time within 15 minutes. And after each presentation, our discussant, Ms. Yanru Jiang, and I would give you comments and review within 2 to 5 minutes. Yes, about 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, and if you have any question and open question, you can also propose your question to us. Okay, yeah, and after the presentation, we would have a stage of the free discussion. Okay, and Ms. Yanru Jiang would propose her question to us, and if any one of you just have some idea, you can raise your hand and give us the answer. Okay, yeah, and before this panel, I just want to say. For every one of us, and or for most of you, maybe this is your first time to give a presentation in front of the screen and on an international conference. But I just think it is totally okay. And please be brief and speak out. And if you just feel okay, you just feel it is difficult to express what you want to talk, then you just slow down and say it bit by bit and step by step. Okay, and believe in yourself, okay? And don't be nervous. I just think this is your first step, and your first step is the AEJMC, so it's really good. Okay, and for the panel, and I will introduce the first presentation, and the first presentation is the acceptance of 5G in China, the role of personal perception and reference group, which is presented by Ms. Qianying. And Qianying is now currently working as a PhD student at the Department of Public Policy at the University of Hong Kong. And previously, I also completed my master's degree here. And about 1 year ago, and I and Ms. Qianying, and we just did the research together all the time. So my old friend. Okay, welcome. Let's share your screen. Yeah.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Oh, hello everyone, and good afternoon to the audience in the USA, and good morning to my partners in China. And it's my honor to give such a speech in this international meeting. And thank you very much for my partner for letting me act as the reporter. And I will try to discuss a study about the acceptance of 5G in China with you today. And the content contains 5 parts. That's instruction, related words, method, result, and discussion. And let's enter the introduction part. So the first question is, what is 5G? I think that this question is no longer unfamiliar to us now, because 5G has been promoted in China, and 5G is the 5th generation wireless system, and it aims to increase data transmission, reduce latency, and wide coverage, and increase the flexibility of wireless service. And 5G can improve business applications and some digital experience, such as a video conference like Zoom. So it is believed that 5G will bring a unique connection experience to users. And although 5G has more advantages over 4G, and its promotion still faced with many difficulties. For example, the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity thinks that the 5G may bring about problems such as the disasters, physical attacks, legal problems, and unintentional damages. Just like the Zhang said that the arrival of 5G networks brings numerous security changes, just like the technology from 1G to 4G did previously. And as you know, China is not the first country to promote 5G. Before China, South Korea, the United States, and the United Kingdom has already begun constructing and promoting 5G. And South Korea even announced that its commercial use of 5G in 2018. And however, China is the essential factor that makes 5G receive widespread attention. China began to promote the 5G commercial use on October 1, 2019. And it has not yet achieved full coverage. This is so there is still some space for researchers on the development of 5G in China. And until now, 5G has been promoted worldwide for nearly 2 years, and we obtained all the 5G related researchers through Google Scholar, and we found that most of these researchers were published in REEE conference and some technology journals like the Journal of Computer of American, Journal of Engineering Research, and something like that. And you will find that the topics they focused on are mainly about the specific technologies and some like the cognition challenges and these things on the 5G. And after the 2017, some researchers will focus on the smart city and Internet of things and artificial intelligence. And in 2019, we discovered that the 5G researchers focus on the blockchain and some new applications and its adoption and conspiracy theory. You will find that the 5G research of 5G has been moved from the perspective of developer to the perspective to users. And the study of the new technologies acceptance is not a new thing. They are already some. some models about this research, such as the technology acceptance model and diffusion and innovation, protection motivation theory, and herd mortality. And there are some key concepts in these models, in these theories, such as the perceived ease of use, perceived usefulness, and privacy protection, and perceived risk and risk acceptance, like these things. And most studies will combine these models to do their research, such combine TM and GITM and TM and HM. And so this study tries to combine TM and HM to do our research, and so we hypothesize this 8 hypotheses, and among them, the reference group popularity corresponds to the herd mortality, and the security concern risk corresponds to protection motivation theory. And in order to test the hypothesis, we carried a survey which brings us to the third part, the method. And since our population is all the 50 potential users, we use the snowball sampling, and we published an online questionnaire on cortex and get 270 valid samples within 1 week. And according to the result of questionnaire, women account for the main number of survey respondents and reached 65.9%. And 20 to 29 years old is the leading group. And bachelor is the degree of most respondents. And 2 to 3,000 MB is the income of most respondents, which is also related to the identity of students. They are the primary respondents. And according to the hypothesis, we have following 4 key variables: perceived ease of use, perceived usefulness, security concern, and reference group popularity. And we also give some examples for the questions we in the questionnaire, such as interaction with the privacy is often frustrating. User privacy will improve my job performance, and concern with better security or privacy in 5G, and the percentage of your like friends, colleagues are using or will use 5G. And now let's move to the fourth part, the result. And for the result, you can see that our questions are highly reliable, since the alpha number is higher, and we use the MLs to draw all the previous hypotheses into an SEM model and perform the calculation. And you can see most of our hypotheses were posted, such as the original TM model and the royal of reference group popularity. And however, the relationship between the security concern and the perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness is different from our hypothesis. The result indicates that the security concern has no relationship with the perceived ease of use, and the security concern has a positive correlation with the perceived usefulness. So, based on this result, we come to the last part, the discussion. This study once again pictures the importance of the TM model in the research of the new technology promotion. And for the acceptance of 5G in China, the perceived usefulness has more significant impact on the respondents' user intention. And 5G, because 5G is not a technology that needs us to learn to use, people are concerned more about whether it is useful than the 4G. And the reference group are of the great significance in personal intention to use 5G. This point is also fit with herd mortality and the persuasion theory, because the and this group is not only affect the individual's views of ease of use and usefulness, but also affect the concern for security. And last, the security concern has a positive effect on perceiving the usefulness of 5G, because the personal information security is closely related to the specific function of 5G technology. The logic in this in this result is that because we care about our prevent information and safety, so we will look for this information about the 5G functions, so we will know it is useful. So that's why the result shows that. And for the future study, the limitation of this study is obvious, because we only conduct a small sample survey in mainland China. And when our question was released, most people don't know much about the 5G. And now that the 5G is being promoted worldwide, and future study can focus on the promotion of 5G all over the world, and also compare east and west, including problems in content by the Huawei. And besides, due to the continued influence of COVID-19, some views about 5G and the COVID-19 has been appeared. Some people believe that 5G can suppress the immune system, and thereby making people more easily to get this virus. And 5G spreads, and some people believe that 5G technology spreads the new COVID-19 somewhere. So these views are called the 5G coronavirus conspiracy theory. Although we think that these views are ridiculous, or you don't believe these views, but the reason behind these views deserve our attention and discussion. So that's all for this study, and thank you for your watching and listening.
Okay, and thanks for your presentation, Ms. Qianying. Yeah, and welcome Ms. Yanru Jiang to give your suggestion or comment. Yeah, welcome.
Yes. So thank you, Yundi, for walking us through this terrific presentation. I really like how you share your introduction with literature review covering from what other field has been conducting their research on the 5G technology to what we as a social science, communication scholars should do in covering the issue of the 5G. And really interesting is that you are showing from 2016 to 2020 that actually people's perspective and what kind of issue they are focused talking about 5G has been shifted from whether what kind of technology it is can be empowered by the 5G to really critically thinking about whether 5G is embedded with other political ideology or conspiracy perspectives. So from here, we can really see there's a shift in our knowledge or in our perception regarding this technology. And I think that's also why using the technology acceptance model to measure the user intention of 5G technology is really important, because we have been shifting to a more skeptical perspective regarding this issue. And I will say several good points I see from your research is that definitely the methodology part, you have used a really sophisticated method for the structural modeling by showing the correlation between different. So I'm wondering, is it this the correlation or this the causality? So do you show like one factor has led to the result of the other factor, or they're only correlation?
You mean that? Sorry, can you repeat your question?
So I wonder, like for the variables in this picture, are you showing the correlation between two variables, or are they the causality between the two variables? So, for example, are you measuring perceived ease of use lead to the user intention, or are they actually only correlated between the two variables?
Yeah, in these models, we do the they are the relationship between the cause and the result, I think.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, because for a lot of social science models, it's kind of hard for them to determine there's a causality between the two items. Usually they can only show the correlation. So I guess this is a progressive steps in your research. And building from that, I really love your conclusion by saying that 5G is not actually some kind of new technology that people need to be familiar with or need to learn any kind of new skill to implement those technology. It's actually an infrastructure built by maybe government or some NGOs, but then the users can automatically experience the improvement in speed. So in a passive way, instead of like being a proactive user in using this technology. So I guess that's a great observation from this research. And I like this perspective a lot. And there are also several maybe not issues, but maybe a comment for your research. So in the survey, the question you used for the example, I thought there's kind of a leading question bias in framing those questions. So you're asking the users whether using 5G technology will improve your life. So usually when we do a survey, we usually ask in a neutral way by saying maybe what kind of statement will you agree? Maybe the statement 1 is, will this lead to an improvement in your life? And statement 2 will be, there won't be any kind of improvement in the life. So in this way, you won't be biased to your users by telling them, it's improving, and then maybe you want to agree with this statement. So that's my suggestion for like maybe asking your questions in a more neutral way instead of in a biased way. And I also like how you mentioned like security concern as one of your variables in setting the survey question. And for security concerns, I think there might be some confusion. So one is about whether users really concerned of the issue brought out by 5G technology, such as the privacy issue, or maybe some kind of bad intention that maybe employee from the other advanced hacker or something. But then another way to understand security concern would be, does users really pay attention to the issue of security instead of really concerned with security? So I wonder like which one are you really focusing on? I guess it's more like the second one, like whether users are paying attention to the security issue, or whether they're really okay. Yeah. So that's all the sharing from my side, and thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, and a few more words, and and because I have witnessed the construction of this presentation, and so I know, and all of the results were derived from the structural equation modeling, and for this technology, it is more like the causal inference. Yeah, so it is not the correlation. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, and thanks for the presentation, and thanks for your constructive comments, Yanru. Okay, and Ms. Qianying just proposed this research to study on the how we can adoption the 5G technology and under a Chinese context. Okay, and thanks for the research. Okay, and right now let's move on to next presentation. And next presentation is the next is the impact of social media context on information communication structure and the information diffusion model. Okay, and in this research, Mr. Bin Dai would compare Zhihu and Weibo, and Zhihu is something like the Quora knowledge-based sharing social media and platform, and Weibo is something like Twitter in around the world. So, and he just want to use the framework of social media context to compare these two things, and using a social network analysis method. Okay, and Binda is a master student at the College of Literature and Journalism, Central South University. And I also completed my bachelor's degree here, so we are also a friend. Yeah. Okay, welcome, Binda. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to the audience in USA, and good morning to my friends in China. So, our research topic is the impact of social media context on information communication structures and information diffusion model. Our research is based on the two platforms, Weibo and Zhihu. You know, Weibo is one of the most popular social media platforms in China, which has attracted millions of users. Based on 5G technology, Weibo has the characteristics of short, flexible, and fast. Due to its convenient information sharing and high-speed information diffusion nature, Weibo promoted the generation of online public opinion to a certain extent. Weibo became an important political discussion online platform because it can foster public online issue networks conveniently and inexpensively beyond geographical boundaries. Zhihu as a question and answer platform are online communities which focus on asking and answering questions based on social relations. Zhihu's users are mainly composed of professionals and experts, which makes Zhihu generate many serious and constructive discussions and answers. Weibo and Zhihu are not just the platforms for content production, content sharing, and content consumption. They have become important platforms for netizens to discuss public opinion, events, and social hot issues. And they are reshaping the structure of China's public sphere. There are many differences between Zhihu and Weibo in terms of platform environment, user composition, and communication mechanism. However, there is no relevant research to systematically analyze the relationship between context differences and communication structure. Has received the less scholarly attention, and there is a lack of a clear analysis framework for comparing the differences of these two social media platforms. So, we sorted out the related research of context theory. Context is derived from drama and film, usually refers to the behavior and the state in a tangible physical situation. As early as the 1980s, the American scholar Midwinter inherited and developed the Goffman's drama theory and McLuhan's the media is the message and proposed the concept of text. Then text applies to sociology, communication, and other disciplines. Postman proposed to understand the impact of media change on people from the perspective. Media is the metaphor. Later, American scholar Scope and Israel proposed the context theory. According to the existing research of scholars, context can be interpreted as the sum of the relationship between people and the surrounding scenery, including hard elements. It means the physical space you are in, and the soft elements is the atmosphere. Then the Scober and Israel also predicted that in the next 25 years, the internet will enter a new era, the era of context. Scober proposed the main element of context, including mobile devices, social media, big data, sensors, and positioning systems. While the context proposed by Merowitz focuses on the difference between information flow and the presentation mode. However, both Meirowitz and Scober believe that different context media will have different effects on users' behaviors and demands, which will lead to different ways of information dissemination. Some Chinese scholars also explained that social context refers to a set of characteristics associated with multiple uses such as social tie and group behaviors. We have traversed the related research on the information dissemination structure and the diffusion mode. For the perspective of information science, studying the law of information transmission and its influence, and then improving information management is the characteristics of early research. Some scholars have observed the concept of information acquisition paths and proposed a multi-dimensional conceptual framework, including the connotation of information, the connotation of access path, and the related issues and influences and the limitations of information collection. In terms of the construction of the communication model, Sino Weibo Business Unit has summarized the three types of microblogging matrices. It's Dandelion, Radio, and Gemini. Among them, the Dandelion type of transmission has a long transmission path. The transmission level is above 3, and each transmission node has also attracted more people's attention. And with the rapid rise of social media such as Weibo, Zhihu, and TikTok, the acquisition of social network communication data has become more and more convenient. Therefore, more and more scholars have adopted social network analysis to study information transmission path and information diffusion models. For example, some scholars believe that social network has changed the path of information dissemination, and the friends in the network have become the main body of secondary dissemination, which greatly affects the spread of information. And some others study the network structure characteristics and the keynote identification of public opinion dissemination of emergencies. And some scholars, based on the social network analysis, starting from the three attributes of point centrality, intermediate centrality, and the close centrality, compared and analyzed the dissemination of public opinion information on mobile and non-mobile networks. The following section will focus on explaining the three aspects of the social media context to specifically explore which characteristics of Weibo and Zhihu affect its communication structure and the diffusion mode. We used some concepts in the social media context analysis framework to compare the communication modes of the two media. Based on simple observations, we have the following research questions. For the media nature, Weibo pursues the number, speed, and efficiency of manufacturing hotspots. Zhihu is more inclined to provide users with deeper and more complete content. For the audience structure, Weibo users shows more obvious knowledge and cultural stratification than Zhihu users. For recommendation algorithm, Zhihu is a user question relationship recommendation mechanism, and Weibo recommends topic based on the mainstream recommendation mechanism. It's recommends topics based on the hit of the event. So here comes to our first question: is how do for the media nature, how do different media attributes affect the structure and the diffusion of information? And for the audience structure, we want to explore what is the difference between the influence of Weibo and the Zhihu's network communication nodes, and is there a union of users on Weibo and the Zhihu, and are there any differences between the factors that influence a Weibo and the Zhihu to form a union? And for the recommendation algorithm, here comes to our most important question. How do the recommendation models of different platforms affect the diffusion rate and the breadth of social networks? In order to analyze the information dissemination structure and diffusion mode of Weibo and Zhihu, we used the Python to crawl all the original Weibo and the question and answer discussions on Zhihu with the keyword trade war from May 10, 2019 to June 10, 2019. For Weibo, we searched with the keyword trade war, collect the original Weibo information, and further collect all forwarding, comments, and the like data from the original Weibo address. The information field includes basic information attributes such as the topic, user's ID, time, and the content of the microblog. For Zhihu, we collect questions, answers, comments, and other content in topic discussion. The original data includes the questions, answers to each question, comments below the answer, likes, and names of community members participating in the answer. In order to review the information dissemination structure of Weibo and Zhihu, the evaluation indicators describing social network structure and relationship characteristics include cohesion, average path length, diameter, and so on. The calculation method is displayed on your screen. This is the example of the formation of the network age on the topic of trade war in Weibo, and here is the Zhihu. We use degree centrality to describe the influence of nodes, and our degree and clustering coefficients to describe the joint for information of the network. We also constructed the diffusion speed and diffusion breadth of the time series network. So, as can be clearly seen from the picture, Zhihu's network on your left hand is very sparse, while Weibo's network is much larger. The data results are displayed in the table above. So let's see this table. From this set of data, we can know the rho means density, and the C means the clustering coefficient, L means the average path length, and the D means diameter. From this set of data, we can know Weibo's node cohesion is lower than Zhihu's node cohesion. From this view, Zhihu's users are more cohesive. The relationship between individuals are stronger, more direct, closer, and information is frequently distributed within small groups. Weibo is far superior to Zhihu in the average path length and the diameter for the propagation because it has the advantage of forwarding. Assume that the out degree and in degree obey the power law distribution with the parameter alpha. We calculated alpha Weibo is equal to 2.8831. It means the out of the range distribution and the degree centeredness of Weibo obey the power law distribution. That is, a small number of users have a greater impact. Most of the user influence is weak. Because the amount of Zhihu's data in Zhihu is too small, we can't calculate the alpha Zhihu. Let's see. O means the average out degree. We can see the O of Weibo is larger than Zhihu, and the clustering coefficient of Weibo is larger than Zhihu too. So it means there is a union between users of Zhihu and Weibo, indicating that high impact users act like a guide, and that users in the federation interact with each other, but it's difficult to reach users outside the federation. From the data point of view, there are more unions formed on Weibo. Users with higher followers on Weibo seems to more likely to form a union than users with higher followers on Zhihu. And the last data means the Weibo's hot research recommendation mechanism based on the common interest of a large number of users spread faster and more widely. Zhihu's recommendation based on the user's own interest limits the division rate and the breadth of social network to some extent. So let's move to our discussion and conclusion. Thanks for the recommendation mechanism of Weibo with hotspots as the core. It's more convenient for people to obtain hot event information, and hot event information is delivered to users more quickly. The Weibo hot search list is the core function of Weibo, which plays the role of making waves in the process of information dissemination. According to research, another question, oriented recommendation mechanism of Zhihu, the dissemination network is more concentrated, and the information interaction in small groups is more frequent. This is the biggest difference between the two platforms in the recommendation mechanism. Compared with Zhihu, user interests on Weibo platform are relatively vague and changeable. Weibo is taking advantage of this feature to give full play to the platform's hot recommendation advantage and quickly occupy the high ground in a short period of time. Zhihu's question and answer mechanism relies more on the strong relationship between users or the high degree of interest and field correlation, and the timeliness of communication is weak. In the communication network of Weibo, opinion leaders play a vital role. The outgoing rate of some nodes is much higher than that of ordinary nodes in the communication network. The spread range and the depth of this node are very prominent. However, Zhihu recommends related questions and discussions based on the user's field of interest. The user relationship under the same issue is closer, and the influential opinion leaders in the specific field have a higher voice and authority. Okay, the last topic is an important sign of the formation of a union on Weibo, and on the Zhihu platform, question will only be accurately posted to people with corresponding interest to participate in answer and discussions. So our research also has an obvious limitation. From May 10, 2019 to June 10, 2019, there is less data of Zhihu with the keyword trade worth. So it's difficult to verify whether the in degree and out degree conform to the power law distribution. Yeah, now and here's the future topic we can research on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your presentation and discussion. Yanru.
Okay, sure. Great presentation, very informative one. So I will just briefly talk about several points I found from your presentation. The first one is that you mentioned media nature as a part of element in your framework. So I'm not particularly familiar with the media nature, but maybe you can also look for some literature in media affordance, because that is usually the term that has been used to study different features in social media platforms. And second one is you keep mentioning the user question algorithm or structure of Zhihu, but you actually didn't explain what is the user question. So I'm not quite clearly understand that point. But I guess it's just a small issue for the definition. And the third one is you're using a network analysis, which is sophisticatedly analyzing different parameters and comparing different network structure between the two platforms. I thought that's really progressive and great. The one issue I saw there is that you mentioning you script the keyword of trade war, but you didn't talk about any specific contextual stuff about the trade war. So maybe even though we want to discuss more conceptual level ideas, you can also introduce some contextual ideas about what are the center of discussion in this trade war network. Are they politicians? Are they KOL or news media agency? So those are the comments from my side. But overall, great presentation, and thank you for your effort.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Binda just want to compare these two social media platforms and using the social network analysis and computational methods. So very innovative and constructive. Okay, thanks for your presentation and the constructive comments from Yanru. Okay, right now let's move on to another presentation. Trust and credibility when perceiving an AI anchor as AI or human, and which is presented by Yidi Zhang. And Yidi Zhang is an incoming master student at Michigan State University, and her research interests include the communication and technology and the human-computer interaction. Okay, welcome.
Hi all, and I now share my screen. Just a moment, please.
Okay, and please man the time because we now have a very tight schedule. Yeah.
Sure, I'll be quick.
Yeah.
You guys see my screen right now?
Yes, okay.
Okay, sure, and good morning for all, and also good afternoon for Yanru and also if any other audience from the States. And my name is Yidi Zhang. I'm pleased to speak here representing my team to present our research on trust and credibility. And our research is focused on the AI anchor, and we want to explore the trust and credibility between and the differences between when people perceiving an AI anchor as AI or human. So, and a very brief background information for AI anchor is in 2018-19, actually, 2 AI anchors were developed by the Xinhua News Agency and a news company and a technology company in China called SogoTech. And you can actually see these 2 anchors now at the screen, and they are very similar to human rights. And actually, when AI anchor entered the news industry, it's a really great benchmark for news stepping into the AI era. And but you may be curious about how you can trust the AI anchor, like how you can define that they are telling the facts but not the fake news. So this question may be important at the current stage, and that also related to the information trustworthiness. But actually, in the information trustworthiness in computer or in AI have already discussed widely by the communication as well as the information scholars. And also, like human-computer interaction and also the human-robot interaction, trust have already discussed. Some scholars even found out that the AI, under some condition, and they can help people increase the trust toward information. For example, the smart reply device, like the Alexa from Amazon and Siri, you can trust information provided by them, right? Because they are all from the internet and the search engine, so they have a really high trust and credibility. Okay, so to build up our research, we of course we read some readings and some literature previously. So the first one we found very similar to our paper was conducted by the social technology lab at the Cornell. So researchers, they focus on the perception that the profile written by a human or AI influence the trustworthiness. So they raised up a new framework of the replicant effect. So this, in fact, is, okay, please let me read because the definition is too long. And as when the participants' thoughts, they are facing a mixed set of AI or human written profile, they may mistrust the content they see. So that means that when people are seeing something that mixed, and that may let them feel not really trust in the content provided. But 3 studies actually were provided in the research, and one of the study they found out that when people were presented with either all human written or all AI generated profiles, participants did not assign different trustworthiness scores to the host, which actually indicate that when people only receive the word content from AI or human, the trustworthiness level will remain the same, even though they have different perception before they actually read the content. So the gap between our interest and the previous research is that the previous research only focused on people received the written content from AI or human with a perception before reading. And according to the hyperpersonal model in the computer-mediated communication area, nonverbal cues also play an important role in the information exchange. So when we are facing the AI news anchor, actually we are seeing that they are playing visually. So we are curious about the perception influence the people's trustworthiness level toward the news anchor is that we see they are presenting the news with some gestures and with their face instead of only the text. And but when we are talking about the human AI interaction, the role of AI actually is under the communication environment. So we can perceive them as social actors. So that's similar to the CASA theory raised by NASA Moon in 2000 year. And that's the computer are social actors. So in this research, they think that humans apply the same heuristic used for human interactions to the computers. So jump out from the human-computer interaction to the more similar to AI is the human-robots interaction. So in 2006, scholars also found out that from the personality of robots, and they focus on the big 5 factors of the robots' interaction with human. And under the big 5 factors, they concentrate on the dimension of the extroversion. And extroversion actually already proved a few years ago, before this research result, is that they have been proven very important in HCI. So they focus on the cues under the extroversion dimension. But what we want to focus is on the nonverbal cues in AI. So the gap between is no specific research to our knowledge. It's actually land in a point of how nonverbal cues influence people's trust toward AI. So up to now, we have 2 research questions raised up. So the first one is, when people perceiving AI as news anchor, do they assign same trustworthiness comparing to human anchor? And the second research question is, how nonverbal cues influence people's trust toward AI news anchor? So the method we use in this research is we feature a web-based experiment with a 2x2 method. So in total, we've got 80 participants, and we separate them to 2 groups. For half of them, they will see an anchor sitting there, and for the rest, they will see an anchor standing there. And within each group, half of the participants will be told as you are watching an AI news anchor presenting the news. And for the other, we will tell them that you are facing a human presenting news. And the difference for the human is we will ask one more question about, did you figure out that the video is presented by AI, to ensure that they are in the perception of human anchor. So to measure the trustworthiness toward the AI news anchor, the scale was used from the talking-based computer agents raised by Gong and Nas in 2007. And 6 questions were conducted and using the Likert scale, and the reliability for this measurement is 0.76. So after that, we conducted a 2-way ANOVA And to answer our previous research question. So for the first research question, you can figure out on the left chart, and you can see people trust AI anchor less if they perceive the AI as if they perceive anchor as AI. Oh, I already told that it's AI, right? So let me start again. People trust the anchor less if they perceive the anchor as AI rather than human. So that answered the research question 1. And for the second research question is on the chart at your right side, and that's when people perceive the anchor as human, more nonverbal cues will enhance the credibility. So on the opposite, and when people perceive the anchor as AI, more nonverbal cues would undermine the credibility. So that may due to like unnatural gestures or unnatural facial expression and so on. So to sum up, our current finding is that under the experimental environment, the perception of AI anchor as AI or human will impact the trust of anchor and the credibility of news presented by the anchor. And also, the nonverbal cues can influence the credibility of information provided by AI. So you may think that's a little bit different from the research I mentioned before, conducted by scholars from Cornell. So I think that's the difference between like the text context only and the visual context. So this is how our work contributes to the human AI interaction, is that we extend the replicant effect from word context to the visual context, and also we add in some nonverbal cues as variable. And but still, this work is ongoing progress. So they still have many uncontrolled variables and have limitations, include like some elements that contain individual environments. For example, voices. We did not conduct that as our variable. So we still need a lot of improvement. And if you have any suggestions, feel free to discuss with me. And also, an open question for discussion and for this panel is, with the help of algorithm, like some news app, they actually do not need the reporters to send out crowd push to target users. So even though their push title or push content were generated by AI. So from my knowledge, there is a very famous financial news agency in China. They are now actually using AI to update their flash news on the website. So back to our study, like AI news anchor still has lower trust than human news anchor. So at the current age, if we want to make AI anchor a wider use, what would be the solution to figure out the issue of nonverbal cues? So I think this is an open question for you to think about after this panel, or and if you have any feedback, you can also send it to me, and here's my email for your contact. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, and good job. And because I am also the co-author of this paper, so in fact, I don't have so many suggestions or comments, but I'm just curious about, do you know the theory of media equation?
Yes, but
okay.
I think I'm not an expert on that part.
Yes, and how do you think about the difference between the media equation and just like I can remember the CASA theory? What is the difference, do you think?
I think I still need some reminding of that paper, because this paper actually conducted a few years ago, a few months ago. So I'm not really at a clear mind now. So maybe we can discuss that. Yeah. After we remind that, but at the current stage, like I think maybe CASA just like is also not a little bit out of date, because CASA is still just like as a computer, but we are entering the AI age, right?
Yes. Okay, thank you. And one more question. And after checking the previous literature, and I just found the previous researcher on the comparison between the AI and human, and we always do the research and take the materials of the real human. But in our research, And our human is a perceived human, is the perception of a human which is stimulated by our capture materials, right? And how do you think about the difference between the real human and the perceived human?
Well, the perceived human you can treat as just I'm telling you we're human, but when you are looking at the AI anchor, like I show in my screen, they are not. But just like perceived is something that just a suggestion in your mind. But for real human, they have real gestures, and that's totally different concept, I think.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Good job. Okay.
Thank you as well.
Yes. Thank you. Let's move on to the last presentation. The last presentation is the effect of speech modes, voice gender, and content type on the legibility of audio news, which is presented by Zimeng An. Zimeng An is a master student at Communication University of China, and she studies the communication psychology and the media psychology and human-computer interaction. Okay, welcome.
I'm Zimeng. I'm honored to be able to speak on this panel. Okay. This is title of my study, The Effects of Speech Models, Voice Gender, and Content Type on the Legibility of Audio News. According to our daily observation, we can find that AI is no longer as a product of computer science, which is also a key role of media revolution and which has changed the journalistic practice. We can see this picture of the man named Xiao, who is the first fully simulated AI anchor all of the world. With the artificial intelligence, with the development of artificial intelligence, the stress of using sensitive speech is getting lower and lower, and more medium platforms use sensitive speech, and in consideration of sensitive speech can break through the limitations of human audience, such as improving broadcaster efficiency, reduced rate of error, and labor cost. More and more media platforms prefer using sensitive speech. In our daily life, a great number of weather forecasters and financial news is sensitive speech. But however, many people argue that do sensitive audio news and natural audio news have the same effect of audiences. So to answer these questions, we launched these studies. The previous studies mainly focused on the field of computer science. Many scholars pay more attention to the AI audience, rhythm, speech, and sound source like these studies. But with AI increasingly integrated with journalism and communications, many AI studies attracted attention of communication scholars. But most of studies are theoretical studies. We can find this table. And the empirical studies is slightly inadequate. And in those of empirical studies, the variables are not comprehensive. We can see this table. We can easily find that every is basically focused on gender, like voice gender and content gender. But but if we want to answer the question, the difference between different speech types, we must do to compare with natural speech and sensitive speech. So, after summarizing the strengths and shortages of previous studies, our studies focus on two questions: whether there is a difference between sensitive speech and natural speech in terms of legibility of audiences. Is audiences' legibility of different speech modes affected by other variables? To make up for the lack of array in previous studies, we select 3 arrays. In content type speech models, voice gender. Voice gender is an important factor from previous studies. We can know that. But different type of content is also important factors which may impact the effect of broadcasting. So in these studies, we added the content type as an important area. We also take likability of audio news as a dependent variables, which includes cognitive, affective, and behavioral 3 dimensions. Cognitive mainly refers to the some logical appraise. For example, do you think the audio news is understandable, and do you think this audio news is naturally? Secondly, affective dimension means that some feelings of audio news. For example, do you think this audio news is interesting, and do you think this audio news is enjoyable? Finally, behavioral dimensions means that are you willing to continue to listen this audio news, or are you willing to share this audio news? Based on the research questions and specific variables, we propose some hypotheses. First, audiences stimulated by natural speech perceived a higher ability than synthetic speech. Secondly, audiences stimulated by female voice perceived a higher ability than male voice. Thirdly, audiences stimulated by persuasive news perceived a higher likability than message. And then we continue pose another 2 research hypotheses. There is a significant crossover interaction between the speech mode and the voice gender for likability of audio news. There is a significant crossover interaction between the speech mode and the content type for likability of audio news. Let's move on to my method. We use the experiment to explore the different likability of audiences. 18 students participated in the experiment who are aged between 19 and 20 years old and not measured in communication or broadcasting. During the experiment, participants were asked to fill out a questionnaire and listen to experimental material. Each material including 4 pieces of audio news, and the participants were required to fill out questionnaire after listening each piece of audio news. Our questionnaire consists all of sentences like in this table. We can see that the reliability of all variables are higher than 0.7. That means the reliability is acceptable. So in design our experimental material, we not only consideration the time of speech, but also divided the speech mode, content type, and voice gender into material evenly. So let's see our results. After multi-ANOVA, the result shown in this table. We can find that the large part could be observed. You can see the square of eta of speech mode is at the highest level. Specifically, we can find that speech mode and content type will significantly affect the audio news likability. We can see that audience prefer natural audio news and persuasive audio news. Although there is no significant difference between male and female voice gender in terms of likability of audio news, but we can see the right bars. That means in behavioral dimensions, people are preferred to female audio news rather than male audio news. And then for For the interactive effect, we can find that people when people listen to natural speech with purple one, they are prefer female ones rather than male ones. But when they listen to synthetic speech, they prefer to male audience rather than female audience. That is interesting. But when they listen to the synthetic audience, the gap between message and persuasive is much smaller than when they listen to natural speech. So let's see our discussions. According our studies of AI in field of communication and journalism is insufficient. But our study not only compared with natural speech and synthetic speech, but also put the experiment under the context of journalistic practice. So our results not only prove the different effects of different speech modes, but also enlightenment for application of AI technology in journalistic practice. Secondly, this study revealed the audience's liability of audience could be affected by many factors. For example, when people listen to natural speech, they prefer female audience, but when they listen to synthetic speech, they prefer male audience. It suggests that in the realm of AI digital medium, we can adjust other factors to improve people's attitude of synthetic speech. Finally, in actually experiments, we not only require the participants to fill out questionnaire, but also we test their EEG. We want to, according to their analyze the fluctuation of EEG. We want to explore the impact of speech modes. But truthfully, there is no significant fluctuation of EEG. Thus, here I want to propose an open question. How to understand the different results between the EEG? There is no significant fluctuation of EEG and the self-reporting method. That is my presentation. Thank you for listening and watching.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. And I also have witnessed the construction of the presentation of Zimeng and from the scratch. Okay. And it is a great job and a great presentation. But can you just go back to the last page of your presentation? Yeah. The last page. Just like, okay, and here I just want to make a explanation about the EEG. And EEG is a technology about how to say it. It is something like the brain wave. Just scan your brain wave, and it is a device to just like we do the MRI scan and the CT scan in hospital. Yes, and we can test the fluctuation wave and with the EEG scan. So. And if there's something changed, just like the emotion and the fluctuation will change too. And then according to the test result, maybe you can just get some conclusion. But according to your result, you just said that there's no significant fluctuation, right? Then I'm just curious about if there's no constructed validity. So maybe you can just take care of this question and you can just focus on some previous literature just to check if the wave is different that we test. For example, because I don't know, I'm not very professional in the neuroscience and communication neuroscience and media science. So I don't know what you can do in the next step, but I can just give you this suggestion. Yeah. And I also have two little questions. The first one is, I have noticed that you just did the factor analysis, right? Yes, and can you go to that page? Okay, the factor analysis. Yeah, and I'm just curious about, you just did the factor analysis first or the reliability check first? Oh, okay, so it is the confirmatory factor analysis, right? Yes, and you know, frankly speaking, I don't think this is the best way to do it at this step, because, and as you can see, the reliability is not so high. It is about 0.7, and it is only at the level of acceptable. Yes, and if you can do it better, maybe you can get a 0.8 or even 0.9 score of the compact alpha reliability. Yes, and you know, for the process of operationalization of the variables, maybe you should check the literature first and find a good scale, and then do the operationalization. Yes, and okay, and I don't have more question, and the organizer just told me that we can take a little longer if necessary, since we don't have any other session after this. So let's go to the stage of the free discussion. Okay, and welcome Yanru, just organize our free discussion. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I will moderate this session, so everyone just be casual and have fun. It's the last session of today. So I have developed several questions based on what you previously discussed about, but more on the conceptual and higher level. So the first one is regarding the recommendation algorithm, because I really think it's an interesting and important topics for communication scholars. So in the Western world, advanced recommendation system has been blamed for providing politically polarized content that kind of lead to more like polarization in the Western world, especially in the US. But for China, it's actually a politically and ideologically united country. So I wonder, do you observe any chance of polarization, and what type of polarization might be if the recommendation has been too advanced in the Chinese society? So I wonder anyone from the recommendation algorithm research could answer this question.
Yes, public opinion tends to polarize on legal verdicts of some controversial violence, which is unlikely to happen in politics though. For example, as to Jiang case, most of the topics recommended by Zhihu were rational discussion, focusing more on the law involved in the case and the final sentencing outcome. At that time, many emotion texts appeared on Weibo hot search, re-rendering the discussion of the case impulsive and subjective. These voices obstructed the justice, and there was even cyber violence against Liu Xing in this case. So there is obvious difference in the opinion and perception between the users of these two platforms. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. That's quite informative. And I also have an additional question regarding the recommendation algorithm. So there's a really popular phrase called amusing ourselves to death. So which means if we are seeing so much tailored content that trying to match our entertaining pursuit, then we are losing the interest in pursuing the intellectual content. So I'm wondering, with technology has become so advanced to feed the users with information they're interested in, do they have responsibility to provide users with high quality and intellectual content, in addition to contradicted to the algorithmic entertaining content? Because those are the ones that is easier to grasp audience attention and can make money from. So what's your opinion? So and who's the author of this paper? Bin Dai. Right.
Oh, well, can I answer this question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you for your question. Globally, I think the current trends of the mass media is just like the new postman says, we live in an age of entertainment to death. So I believe that the tech companies have the responsibility to reduce the effect of such as information cocoon room. Simultaneously, they should take the merit of the technology to provide high-quality content to each user. For example, nowadays, even in the most remote area in China, the mobile network signal can cover each corner, and most of residents can afford a smartphone. So if the digital companies such as the TikTok or the Kuai could provide the educational content to the children who live in the less developed region, in this way, I think there is no doubt that it can empower the education and information resource to the children. I think it is meaningful, and that is what the tech companies should to consider about in the future. Thank you.
Yes, perfect. So like your answers. And then the following question would be regarding the 5G research that you have been presented before. So my question is, some people believe that 5G technology is not that fundamentally different from 4G technology because they are basically increasing the speed of the bandwidth. So, but some people think that with the dramatically increasing the speed, we can actually using certain technology that we can never imagine before. So that would be potential 5G technology. So in your idea, is there a fundamental difference between 5G technology and 5G technology and 4G technology? I wonder someone from the group can answer the question.
Okay, thank you for the question. From 3G to 4G, everyone thinks that the speed may have become faster, but when 4G is fully covered, this speed will fully support a series of new applications, scenarios such as mobile payment, fast positioning, and watching videos anytime, anywhere. Therefore, we shouldn't not only at speed itself, look at speed itself, but at speed as a premise. As for what possibilities can it offer us, although I can't think of any new changes 5G will have, I believe that 5G will definitely bring some new trends. For example, the current 5G has crossed hospital collaborative surgery, and the time area is million seconds. That's all my answers. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. And then also I got an additional question for the 5G research. So it seems like China has been the leading country in promoting the 5G technology. So like that's what you said in your research, and that's also based on our common sense. And at the same time, like in the Western world, 5G has been coming to a state that may have been politicized by the Western media. So if that's the case, how would you measure like the model how will the model selection be different if you want to do a comparative study between the Western world and the Eastern world for the 5G technology? So what kind of different measurement or variables will you select for comparing these two different systems of applying the 5G technology? So I wonder, sorry, go ahead.
To the comparative study, I think the main direction to consider is the differences in national politics and some cultural differences between China and the West. First, we should consider the influence of national ideology. Due to the different ideologies and positions of China and the West, Chinese and the Western media often adopted different statements when reporting the same event. So the influence of the local media in Western countries should also be taken into account. Finally, I think it should consider whether Western countries are biased against the Chinese government, such as the degree of trust in the Chinese government description of 5G.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And now I want to move to discussion about the AI anchor technology. Since we have two groups presenting the same question, maybe anyone from the group can answer this question. So based on the AI anchors, it reminds me that right now we are kind of in the area of misinformation, and there are so many fake news circulated online. So with the help of AI anchors, I feel like it's even dangerous that people can actually simulate the real anchor by showing the fake news or misinformation and promote this kind of information flow online. And at the same time, it also kind of concerns me that with the development of technology like AI anchor, will the journalists lose their jobs? Because now we can use AI to featuring to introduce the news. We don't actually need any real anchor. So what would be the role that journalists need to take with the development of technology like AI anchor or AI empowered news development?
Okay, thank you for your question. It's really interesting. Like, it's really a challenge for all journalists like me, since I used to work for a news agency in China. And as I know, just like as you mentioned, misinformation is really a great challenge at the current stage when we use the AI. But I think there's still like some a positive point for using AI in the news industry at the current stage. Like, firstly, is faster. Like, you can pass the information the fastest, and people can gather flash news at the first time. Even they do not need people to generate the grammar or to generate the content. And also, AI could just like they would be the most direct, and they can grab all the information from online, and they can compile all the information at the first-hand information. But you are right, like the misinformation is very important. So I think maybe the best at the current time, one solution for this is we cannot let all journalists go back home and do not work for the news industry anymore. Instead, they may just like focus more on presenting some more emotional news. Like they can express their opinion, and also they can do some investigate news reporting. But for some very general like things that AI can do, like compelling, and that's good for AI, and also people can learn to know more in more deep in news reporting skills, and also make their let our news area and news environment better, instead of fulfilling some news with different level. So yeah, I think that's it has just like they have two sides of the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, I never heard of the term called emotional news, but it's definitely some area we want to check out, considering like AI anchor might have been taking the job of journalism. And at the same time, I also believe, yes, news like investigating journalism, definitely also the area that cannot be fully covered by the AI empowered technology. So that'll be all the questions from my side, and let me know if you have any questions that you want to discuss. And if not, I guess it's come to the end of our panel discussion.
Okay. Okay, and any more questions? If not, okay, and I don't think it. Okay. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but you just raise your hand.
Yeah, it's okay. It's cool. Very fine. Hi. I have a question for I think is Yidi. Is that correct?
Yeah, Yidi.
Yeah, thank you. I know you mentioned like Alexa in your presentation, so I wanted to know if I just want to have your thought about it. If you think that we can take Alexa as an example to enforce and increase people's perception of human-robot interaction, right? Let's say in the diffusion of innovation process, can we cite it as an example to increase people's perception or not? What do you think?
Well, I think Alexa actually is only an example for me to say like replying robots, but it's actually not a main body of my research. Like
Okay,
You know,
no problem.
yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to maybe if anybody have an idea about it, because I wanted to include it in one of the topic I want to work on for, I mean, the people in my class.
Yeah, so I'm trying to ask that will Alexa actually increase people's positive perception of the AI technology because it has been already introduced to our life. So,
I think actually Alexa could be just like different, since Alexa only is a reply bot and it only combines information from online instead of just like passing some own and their real or original opinion. For example, like maybe AI anchor, they are presenting some news that are written or compiled by actually behind human or something that is written well. But Alexa, in my opinion, it's just like a reply bot, which is answering the weather or playing the music. So I think that's totally different stuff. Yeah.
yeah, great. Yeah, because it also reminds me, I'm not sure whether Alexa has empowered like deep learning stuff like machine learning, or it's only like a big data system that trying to organize the data and give the answers to you. So it depends on like what's the actual like algorithmic design of Alexa.
I think the algorithm depends, and maybe just like more deep research on Alexa more in the future. Yeah, also for me.
Thank you all, and thank you for our presenters, audiences, and discussants. Yeah. Okay, thank you all, and have a good night and have a good sleep.